So this is the problem that talks about buying drinks with your meal plan money with some friends. So as it says in the problem, we have $300 left combined on the meal plan, 101 drinks that we're going to purchase, and you're going to buy 600 ounces of coffee with that. And so like it says, you have iced coffees that cost $2 and are 11 ounces. Frappuccinos that cost $3 and are 9 ounces, and Gatorades that cost $4. And we don't really care about the size of those because we only need the 600 ounces of coffee there. So what we're going to do is we're going to let X equal the number of iced coffees we buy, Y equal the number of Frappuccinos that we buy, and Z be the number of Gatorades that we buy. And so then using X, Y, and Z in our information that we're given, we're going to set up a system of 3 equations. So first, for the number of drinks, we're going to have X plus Y plus Z equals 101, because we have 1 drink plus 1 drink plus 1 drink for all of these. These all are just 1 drink. Then, for the amount of coffee that we buy, we're going to have 11X, because that's 11 times the amount of iced coffees we buy, plus 9 times the amount of Frappuccinos we're going to buy. And similarly, for $300 left, it's $2 for iced coffee, $3 for the Frappuccino, and $4 for Gatorade equals $300. All right, so now using this information, what we're going to do is we're going to set up our augmented matrix. So we're just going to write these all straight down using the coefficients and putting our totals on the right half of the augmented matrix. So just like that, we're going to write them all 3 down like that. And notice that we're going to have a 0 right here because we have no z's in this equation, so we're just going to have a 0 there. So now what we want to do is we want to get zeros in this position here and this position here. We would usually try to get a 1 in this position, but as we already have a 1 there, we don't need to worry about that. So like I said, we're going to get these 2 positions to be a 0. So we're going to do that by taking row 2 equal to negative 11 row 1 plus row 2, and that'll get rid of this 11 and make that a 0. And row 3 is going to be negative 2 row 1 plus row 3. And so similarly, that will get this to be a 0. So let's look closely at the first row operation with row 2. So what we're going to do is take negative 11 times our entry in row 1, so 1, plus the entry in row 2, so 11, and that's going to give us 0. So let's copy down the first row because that'll stay the same. And so then this tells us that there's a 0 in row 2 now in position 1. Similarly, we're going to take negative 11 times the entry in column 2, which is 1, plus the entry in row 2, column 2, which is 9, which gives us negative 2. And doing the same thing with the third column, negative 11 times 1 plus 0 equals negative 11. And finally, using our right-hand side, we're going to take negative 11 times 101 plus 600, and that's going to be negative 11 times 101 is 1,111 plus 600 is negative 511. And so that's basically what we're going to do for all of our row operations. It's the only one we're going to show like this, but this is what we're doing. We're taking our multiple or constant out here, multiplying it by each entry, and then adding it to the corresponding entry in the row below it. So for row 3, we're going to take negative 2 times everything in row 1 and then add it to row 3. So we're going to take negative 2 times 1 plus 2, and that'll give us 0. Negative 2 times 1 again plus 3, and that gives us 1. negative 2 times 1 plus 4 gives us 2. And negative 2 times 101 is 202 plus 300 gives us 98. Sorry, that's negative 202 plus 300 gives us 98. So now what we want to do is we want to get this negative 2 to be a 1, because this needs to be a 1 for it to be in our final form. So to do that, we're just going to take row 2 times negative 1/2 row 2. And that'll get rid of the negative 2 there and make that a 1. So again, copy our first row down because that'll stay the same. The third row is also going to stay the same, so we'll just bring that over. And now we're going to do our row operation there. So negative 2 times negative 1/2 is 1. We're just going to leave that as 11 over 2 because our negative signs will cancel out. And then we're going to do the same thing with 511 over 2. All right. So now what we want to do is we want this to be a 0 again too. So to do that, we're going to take, and I'll write it over here, row 3, our new row 3 is going to just be negative row 2 plus row 3, because then we'll have negative 1 plus 1 will make that 0. But first we're going to take our first 2 rows and copy them down again, because those are going to stay the same. And now we're going to do our row operation. So 0 and 0 is 0. Negative 1 plus 1 is 0. And then negative 11/2 plus 2 is going to be negative 11 over 2 plus 4 over 2. So we just add our fractions. Gives us negative 7 over 2. And this one's a little bit trickier. If you have a calculator, that might help. But we're going to take negative 511 over 2 plus 98. We want that, write that as a fraction over 2, so that'll be 196 over 2. And then we add those together, and that gives us negative 316 over 2. All right, now we want this to be 1, because then we'll have 1s all along our diagonal, and then we'll just have to get 0s above our diagonal. So to do that, we're just going to take row 3 equal to negative 2 over 7 row 3. And that multiplied by the reciprocal will give us a 1 in that position. So first 2 rows stay the same. And then we're going to get our third row using our row operation. So 0 and 0, and that will give us 1 here. And then again, we're going to have to do some arithmetic here. So negative 300, this should be 315, not 16. So negative 315 over 2 times negative 2 over 7. So our 2's will cancel out, and our negative signs will cancel out. So then we have 315 over 7. So let's come do long division over here. So 7, 315. So that's going to end up actually just being 45. So that's worked out pretty nicely there for us. All right, next we want to get this to be a 0, and then we'll just have to do work on the first row to get those 2 entries to be a 0. So to do that, we're taking row 2 equal to negative 11 over 2 row 3 plus row 2. So again, our first row stays the same, and now our third row will stay the same. And now we're just going to do our operation on the second row. So 0 will stay the same, and 1 will stay the same because we're adding 0 to both of those. And then negative 11 over 2 times 1 plus negative 11 over 2 is just going to be 0. And now we need to get this 511. We're going to add 45, negative 11 over 2 times 45 plus 511 over 2. And so this is actually going to end up just being 16 over 2, or 8. And if you want to check using your calculator, that would be great. But that's what it will end up actually being, which is really nice. And finally, what we're going to do now is take both of these and get those to be 0 as well. So to do that, we take row 1 equal to negative row 2 plus row 1, which will get rid of that 1, and row 1 equal to negative row 3 plus row 1, which will get rid of that one. All right, so if we do the first row operation first, or let's copy it down first, because those two rows will stay the same. We see that if we do the first one, row 1 equal negative row 2 plus row 1, we have 1 and 0. And then using this 1 and negative row 3 plus row 1, we get this to be a 0. And then we're going to do 101 plus negative 8 plus negative 45, which will give us 48. And so now our matrix is in our final reduced row echelon form, and we're just going to use that to get our final answers out. So we have finally that x equals 48, y equals 8, z equals 45. So that means you bought 48 iced coffees, 8 Frappuccinos, and 45 Gatorades. And that's our final answer.